Use Tanium's Investigate module to get to root cause faster by collecting data points across endpoints and teams. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone. Way back on episode 73 at the end of 2023, we introduced you to the Investigate module. And since then, we've continued to add more eye-popping features that you've asked for in typical Tanium style, right? We've added things like remote browsing of Windows event logs and registries, and a bunch more stuff. We got more modules now that can contribute artifacts to the collection of your investigation. So returning to show us these new capabilities is once again Josh Bryant. You saw him recently talking about the Impact module. So Josh, welcome to the show again. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me back, Ashley. I can't believe we go a year and then it's two in a row. So happy to be back here. If you missed the other videos, I am Josh Bryant. I am a director of product management here at Tanium. I've been here close to 7 years now, and Investigate is one of the two main products that I manage. So I'm happy to be back here and talk about all the wonderful improvements that we have made in a year. It has actually been quite a few new things, not just new features, but enhancements and some bug fixes as well.
Yeah, and as we're talking here, Josh and I go back pretty far, and we've both had this photography hobby that we share, some astrophotography. Josh has got some amazing shots of things in the heavens, and so we've got to enjoy a lot of things as nerds and hobbyists. And here at Tanium, though, we've gotten to talk about Investigate and Impact. So now I'm really interested to hear, just for our viewers who this might be the first time they've heard of this module, could you just give us a recap of, why would I use the Investigate module and what it does?
So we designed this module to help customers reduce their mean time to resolution. And that is whether it's a operational incident. So think I have a problem with my PC, my laptop, whatever kind of device I'm working on that's Tanium managed. I've opened up a help desk ticket and I need to get in and figure out what is going on here, making that easier. But also on the security side as well. I have a security incident. Some alert has triggered saying that there is potentially malicious activity on my endpoint. I want to help you investigate that as well and close those types of incidents faster.
I've got a customer that just raves about this module. They love that timeline where you can see all these different events and artifacts lined up, and they love to tell this story when they first got it. I mean, I didn't even have to show them; they just were off to the races with this module, and they had a business unit that had been fighting a endpoint problem for a week, and they finally called the Tanium team in, and they had it in like 30 minutes. Just they pulled up to Investigate console, and they could go back. Well, here's your problem right here on this date, and it turned out to be some update that had happened by some other product in the environment, and they could pinpoint it right away, and they fixed it within an hour, and they were all back to working. I'm curious what you've heard from other customers.
That makes me very happy to hear that, Ashley, because it means that customers are using the product in the way that it was intended and getting the value we were hoping that they were going to get out of it. Um, I don't always get to hear that type of positive feedback. I have heard a little bit of it, very similar stories to that. But one thing we actually heard a lot back towards the original release is that it wasn't very performant. It was slow, it was sluggish, and that made it a little difficult to use. I am happy to say that we made significant improvements in that area. It is much faster, much quicker, much more what you would expect from Tanium, right? We've always been about the speed in which we can do things, and we've gotten a lot closer to matching that with the product now. And I have heard with customers that have been able to follow up with that had those complaints that it is significantly improved, and they really like a lot of the new features that we've added. So I've gotten lots of positive feedback on some of the things that we'll show you here today. And I'll be sure to mention them as we go through it.
Could you just kind of give us a rundown of all the modules now that kind of, because I know we kind of release something as, hey, here's a new capability, and then we're going to add to it. So, what are all the modules now supported?
So we collect data from a bunch of different modules as part of what you can see as an activity in an investigation. And today, those include patch, deploy, threat response, enforce, and then we've got a little bit from comply. And we're always adding more there. So if any module produces an interesting data point, that would give you clues towards what is the root cause here, or what is causing the issue on my endpoint. We're always bringing those new types of data points into the product.
And then I know we've added a lot of data, like you said, there's types of data points. What are some of the more interesting ones that we've added here in the last year and a half?
Was really expanding our visibility into external data sources, things outside of Tanium products, and being able to bring things like the entire Windows event log into view, or the entire Windows registry, not only into view, but giving you control over that. We also giving you visibility into running services. And yes, I realize I'm focusing a lot on Windows endpoints. Doesn't mean that we're forgetting about Linux and Mac and those non-Windows endpoints. We have some things there as well, and future enhancements for those platforms. But we have the file browsing capabilities. So on just because I don't have, an in-console view of a log, actually, we do have an in-console view. I'm getting ahead of myself there. We have live tailing of files on non-Windows, or actually any supported operating system, right? So there's not a exact equivalent of something like the Windows event log on Linux and Mac. They have all file based. There's a lot of different log files spread throughout the file system. And any one of those I can remotely tail live and see as it updates, like new log entries coming in, and use that as part of my investigative process. So lots of cool stuff there.
Man,
Um,
the phrase that comes into my head is "Get out of here, man! You got to be kidding me! We can do live." So I remember it's been years ago now that we did the live file browsing, and that was just like mind blown across platforms, any endpoint, right? Windows, Mac, Linux, you can browse. Now you're saying that we can actually tail a file in a console remote. That's just crazy talk, man. Real
And
time.
the
That's what
big
Tanium's all
benefit
about.
here is that is anywhere the endpoint is, right? So think about if I'm trying to use native tools, I'm trying to access a file remotely, I have to have like line of sight to that endpoint. If somebody's working from home, there's usually network barriers in the way, right? It's outside of my corporate network. There are firewalls in between here and there, and the entire internet here in between here and there, right? I wouldn't normally be able to view that type of data with more traditional tools. Now, because of the way our platform works, I'm able to establish a connection to that endpoint, no matter where it exists, and get a live view of that data.
Wow. That I'm just thinking all the years we've slogged away in IT without tooling like this, and so I'm ready to see it, man. What are you going to show us today?
Everybody's used to seeing our homepage here. The main starting point for customers when they're coming in to investigate is usually to go to the endpoint itself. Sure, you could come down and start in the module. That's just not how it typically happens. You're usually going to come in one of two ways. Either I'm working directly in the Tanium console here, or through our integration with ServiceNow. I have opened up a ServiceNow ticket, and there's a button when you have the integration set up that will take you directly into the view that we'll go into here. So if I'm not starting from there, I'm going from the Tanium side, I can pick an endpoint, right? Just start typing it in here. Let's pick this one. And we'll go into our single endpoint view. Now I'm going to jump over to the Investigate tab. So there are three main tabs that get added here when you own or are entitled to the Investigate module. You get the Investigate tab, the Remote Management tab, and the Windows Events tab. We'll go through all three of these, but let's start with the Investigate tab here. Now, if you're coming from ServiceNow, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to drop you directly into the Investigate tab and we'll establish our connection to the endpoint as long as it's online, right? If we see an offline indicator up here, connection's not going to work. But then we have our timeline view that you were mentioning earlier that your customer really liked. So we're getting a lot of performance data. And one of the newest enhancements we made here, which is also part of improving the speed and performance that I mentioned earlier. You notice the last time we talked about this, there was a drop down to select what you wanted added to the timeline here. That has moved to a new selection modal. And you see my accounts and everything are already populated. There's a few that are still loading, but this is significantly faster, and you're able to start working with the data much faster than you ever were before. We also removed the limitation around the activity count. You get a warning saying that we don't necessarily recommend trying to load activities that have, this high of a count. You should maybe adjust your scope, reduce the time frame that you're looking at to reduce the count. But if you want to, might load a little bit slower, they'll still eventually load.
You
But
know,
you can
as
find,
we're talking about time frame right here, it might be good just to recap for folks. What are those time frames?
yeah, so by default, we're looking at the last 4 hours. So let me cancel back out of here. We can see our scope, right? So we scope, you can reduce that and you can actually go to a much narrower view than just the last hour. You can get down to a couple minute window if you want to by using either the magnifying glasses or specifying a custom time range here. But we give you some default options that are most commonly used. And then the maximum you can go up to is 14 days. Now, some of our data points, depending on configuration, may not have data going that far back. You'll run into other limitations depending on the data type, but overall maximum 14-day look back. So you can see what happened around when the incident started and figure out, what was that root cause and gain enough evidence to determine what you need to do for resolution.
And when we go to that select activities button, I noticed just scrolling through there, there's a lot more than we had a year and a half ago. Obviously, I'm looking at recorder events coming out of threat response, for example. I mean, there's a lot here. Log on, log off events. I mean, there's all kinds of juicy details in here.
So a lot of what you're seeing here are Windows Event Log subscriptions. When you create a subscription, it's essentially a saved query. It's saying these are the events or the event types that I care about from the event log, and I want to see them in this timeline view so I can work or use them alongside the Tanium sourced events. So the recorder ones that you mentioned up here at the top come from our threat response integration, right? Recorder is primarily distributed through threat response, and all these categories and things come from there. These ones here, whenever you see the little arrow next to it, you can expand. These are from the Windows event logs. Our performance events come from the performance module, which that was one I forgot to mention earlier when you asked me what products are we getting data from. Our browser extension data comes from Enforce, same with the USB device
Oh,
connected.
nice. So we got USB device. Nice. That's great.
Yeah, so these are anything again where you don't see this little arrow that you can expand to see the details on where exactly it came from in the Windows event log. Uh, all these are Tanium sourced events. So again, a lot of these from Enforce and then deploy events, patch events, and we've categorized everything too. So it's easier to find what you're interested in with the different filters you can apply in the selection modal here. So I can choose a specific category and only see the activities available that match that category. We also put a default sort on here, so we'll bring the activities with the highest counts up to the top. That was based on some feedback that we got from customers. The old way of doing this, they said it was difficult for them to scroll down through and figure out what areas they might want to look at first. Here, now you have an indication that there's a lot going on for a specific activity type, that may mean it's important for me to look in that area. Could also mean the opposite, could mean that, oh, there's a lot of noise there and I want to focus on something with a lower count as well. But you've got a lot of flexibility in how you can work with this, and it is building towards future enhancements as well. So later this year, we'll be adding some enhanced search and filter capabilities. So you'll be able to take this a step further rather than just saying the activity type is what I'm interested in. I want to narrow that down more. I want to know this specific piece of information from this activity type. So think of a file event here, for example. I only want to see out of these 819, only show me file events that are a specific path on the endpoint or have a specific file name or some other attribute of that file that's in the data we have available. You'll be able to narrow down your selection, and same across anything here. And then a little bit further out, probably not this year, but still plan to do, we want to introduce a concept of presets. So today, I have to come in here every time I connect to an endpoint to do an investigation. I have to come in here and select, however many of these I want, at least one or more. Let's say I'm going to do these two, and then I can save that. The next time I come back here, I have to do the same thing. I have to select the same two. So if there are certain sets of activities that I'm always interested in for whatever my role is, whatever type of investigation I'm doing, I'm going to reduce the number of clicks there and allow you to save a preset. So you can come back in here and just say, select from a drop down or something, for example. I want to use this preset that has these 5, 10, however many activities selected, and show them to me. Now, what we do have today, though, is a big improvement. Again, this was a customer request, and I have gotten a lot of good feedback on this one, is making it persistent, right? So at least while I'm in my current session here, if I change my scope, these stay put. I don't have to reselect them. Last time I talked to you, I had to reselect them anytime I changed anything about the investigation. So, for example, I can switch this to last hour, and it is automatically going to reanalyze this, give us our new counts, and load the data down here below. So we'd see it's starting to load already significantly faster than it ever was before. And
You
here
know
we are,
what? That
data.
is so nice. Let's look at the timeline again, just for those who haven't looked at this before. I just love this visualization where you can see these events, right? So we're thinking like application crashes, OS crashes, things like that, all correlated in this timeline, and then you can pick your time frame. This is just so powerful when you're doing I mean it's like a level of visibility those of us in ops or security, either one, we've never been able to see all these data sources just lined up, that to tell the story about what happened to this endpoint. This is great.
And the cool thing about the timeline is you can actually, as you're looking at this, you can filter the details below by just clicking on it. So if I'm mousing over here, I'm like, oh, some service state changes happened around this point in time. I click on it, and you notice immediately now, instead of seeing all the everything, I just have the three that are in that time frame that I clicked on, and then I can view the details on them, and of course, add them to an investigation. And adding them to an investigation puts them on a timeline there as well. So if this endpoint is online, or if I've gotten all the data that, or I'm sorry, offline, or I've gotten all the data that I need, I still have that timeline view when I'm working in the investigation itself.
Yeah, could you just, I know we've got some people who haven't seen the other episode. Could you recap there in the flyout where I want to add a data point to an investigation? And that's the whole benefit here is I can collect, like last time we talked about collecting seashells on the beach. Oh, this looks interesting. I want to put that in my bucket of things I'm looking at, and then I can share that bucket of seashells with the team, right?
Yeah. So there's two different ways you can do it. Let's say that all three of these were of interest. I can just select them all and hit the add to investigation button. Or if I'm looking through them and I think, oh, only this first one is, I can add it this way as well. When I add it to an investigation, I have the option of selecting one that was previously created, or I can create a new one. And from here, I'll just give it a name and we'll say Ashley loves it. And then I can assign it to anybody that I want here. So I'll say I'll assign it to myself, and then you can give it a priority. Now, I mentioned the ServiceNow integration earlier. If I came into this from ServiceNow, it would actually put a marker on the timeline showing me the time and date that the ticket was created. So I would be able to look at what happened leading up to the ticket creation. If I didn't do that, maybe I started out in Tanium for whatever reason, I can link this investigation that I'm creating to a ServiceNow ticket. Brings up a search box here. You can search for it by name or anything in the title. You can do it by the ticket number. So I just started typing in perf and we see all the matches that have performance in the title, or I could just start typing in the incident number and we'll see, all the incident numbers there. So let's pick one of these and this will link it to that ServiceNow incident. So now from this point forward, any comments or things that I do in the investigation will get synchronized back to the ServiceNow ticket. They'll get added there as a work note. So you have kind of data going both ways here. And then once you click add, you'll get the message saying that it opened the investigation, and we can pop over here and look at it. But notice we did it in a new tab, so I'm still able to continue working here and continue adding more data to my investigation. But now we have our endpoint and our timeline, and you can see, everything that we've added here was just the one for now. Some recent improvements we made in this view. This is some cool stuff as well. Another customer request. Customer said, sometimes the data that I want is not in Tanium, or the endpoint is offline and there's no data. Like I want to manually create something. So we added an annotations feature, and there's two ways to do that. You notice the button here, or you can shift click on the timeline. If I shift click on the timeline, it is going to pre-populate the point in time that I'm clicking on here as my start time. And so here, if it's for this, it also pre-populates the endpoint. I could optionally choose a different endpoint, and it doesn't even have to be online. As long as it was Tanium managed and it was connected to your Tanium environment recently, it'll show up here. So let's say I want to do a different endpoint than the one I have selected there. Do this one instead. I've changed it. Can optionally put in a user. Got to put in some details. I can say server is offline, and then I can put a comment on here. Ashley is going into the data center to make sure it is powered on. And you can add an end date as well, or just leave it as a point in time thing. But now once I click add, we see I've got it on my timeline here, and it created the new um, endpoint. We
Man,
also
I
have the
just I'm just thinking of like crime drama shows, right? Where you just put a sticky note on the whiteboard with, and they're drawing the strings right between the
yeah.
different things. Like here's like interactive endpoints in this investigation and correlating incidents across endpoints. I mean, this just takes it to a whole new level. It's just like, I just put a sticky note on the board with the crime show drama. This is great, man.
So that was a really cool new feature that we added middle of last year. We also made some enhancements here. Certain activities can have a user associated with them. Now, the service control event we did, no user there, right? But I entered a username in the annotation that I created, so you see it here. So we added that column to give you more visibility. We also have a timeline view for users as well. Now, the timeline view has been there all along. We just didn't show you the user associated with it in the table below. But here, so, our first event, no associated user. The other one has Josh. So you can see who's involved with it, not just what endpoint and what happened on the endpoint.
Which
Very
is really good
important for
again
all
for
sorts of
like
different
security
customers.
investigations, right? I mean, like if we've got a compromised account and what it's bouncing around and doing.
Yeah, exactly. It can build that view of what did this user do on which endpoints at what point in time, and get all sorts of valuable information here.
Well, dude, I'm watching the clock, and I know there are so many new features you want to talk about. I am really itching for people to see the remote event log browsing and the remote registry browsing.
Yeah. So let's go with the remote registry browsing first, because that's our next tab over. This is one of our newest features, our newest major features. So in the remote management tab, there's quite a few different features. The newest being the registry browser. At the top, we have our service control. So for Windows endpoints, it's going to show you the state or status of every service that's running on the endpoint. And depending on your RBAC permissions, you have the ability to start, stop, or restart the service. And then if we scroll down, we'll see our performance summary and live process monitor. Now, these have been there for a while. You have the ability to terminate any process that's running on the endpoint, again, based on your RBAC permissions. But the newest thing, what folks are really excited about, is our Windows registry browser down here at the bottom. So you know, Ashley, that the Tanium platform has had some sensors for looking at registry data at scale. You know, I can ask a question and get back a registry value across any endpoint in the environment. Well, now we're giving you the ability to browse the registry live on a single endpoint. And as we mentioned earlier, a big benefit is I don't have line of sight with my native tools, but this is going to look and feel very similar to what you're used to in like Regedit, for example. So I can go through here and look at any registry key, and not only look at it, I can do the same things that I could do in Registry. I can create a key, I can delete a key, I can modify a value, edit a value, delete a value, etc. Lots of flexibility in here. Makes it really great feature, I think.
That is such a value point right there because we're in a different era. Well, when you and I were coming up in IT, we would go into the system management console in Windows, and we would remotely connect to a machine over a LAN connection, and we could do the service control and registry and on all these native Windows tools. But you can't do that working from home and over the internet, like you said. So the ability to have this live is just it really is a game changer for everyday bread and butter IT ops.
Yeah. And even in those LAN environments that you and I started working out in, a lot of organizations have introduced various degrees of segmentation. So which broke those processes because it's not as flat and open as it used to be. So now have firewalls in between different sections of the LAN or different ACL entries on routers or other network devices that prevent me from connecting to it, or even a host-based firewall doing micro-segmentation. Like I'm not allowing connections from anything into these different endpoints other than these few authorized ones, which sometimes aren't the services that we want to look at. But that's all for the remote management tab. Let's go to the third and final tab that we have here, and that's our Windows Events tab. This was one of the first big features we released after the initial release, and we've made quite a few improvements here as well. So you can browse anywhere, any log that exists in the Windows event log, including one of your favorites here, I know, the Windows PowerShell log. And I can see same details and things similar to what I would get if I was working with this in Event Viewer, but again, with the benefits that we just mentioned.
So that's it, man. I mean, right there. So I found my PowerShell logging event, and I hit add investigation as a security use case, right? I just add these, cherry pick these things out of the event logs, add them to my investigation. They show up on the timeline. It's like, wow. I mean, thinking about I've talked a lot about ops, but for security use case, okay, we've got recorder data side by side with event log. This, I, I know I do this too much on the show. I act like I'm too enthused about our stuff, but I am because, man, this is what we've done for years, and now it's just so much easier.
Yeah, those ones that we saw in the Investigate tab again are based on subscriptions. So the event that we were just looking at is not subscribed to. I can tell because I've got a check mark here that would allow me to. So if I click this, it is going to pre-populate the event ID, the source, and the log path for me. And this was the cool new thing that we added middle last year as well. I can give this a friendly name because I don't know about you. I don't remember what every single event ID is off the top of my head. If we hadn't just looked at it, would you know what event ID 400 was?
I'm a little rusty, dude. Sorry.
Exactly. Oh, you can give it a meaningful name that describes the event rather than having
Yeah.
to remember what is event ID 400 in PowerShell. And then you can also assign it a category. You can choose from any of the existing categories, or you can create a new category for it as well. Makes it easier to find and work with inside of the um, Investigate tab there.
And we probably need to make a public service announcement here as well. Like, don't oversubscribe to event log stuff. I mean, you want to be really choosy about what you're subscribing to. I'm guessing there's some load that happens on the endpoint and the data going back and forth. So, how does that subscription work really?
So, glad you mentioned that. And that was true originally. The
Ah,
way that things were, that's part of what really slowed things down and caused uh, things to just kind of be sluggish in the Investigate tab. When we introduced this feature below it, the Windows Event Log subscriptions, we added about 80 some default subscriptions in here. Now, subscriptions is a little bit misleading, right? These are just saved queries. It is saying that we want to query for these specific event IDs in this path, in this source, and only return those rather than trying to return the entire event log. And we've made a lot of enhancements there already. We have more coming up to where you'll have more flexibility in narrowing these down as well as being able to search across them. The impact to the endpoint itself is negligible. It very brief hit as we query for whatever subscriptions you have enabled. But one of the reasons that we added the ability to enable or disable the subscriptions is so that you could minimize the performance impact if you do experience one. If there are any of these that you're not interested in, you can simply just click and turn them off. And now this is disabled. And now when you open up the Investigate tab, it's no longer going to ask for those events to be returned. Um, some of these don't exist on every endpoint, right? So like BitLocker ones, for example, if you don't have BitLocker enabled, that log is not enabled and you won't have any of these events. So they just end up timing out, but it's really minimal impact on the endpoint. So you can create all sorts here without too much worry. And again, the idea here was to be able to create subscriptions that show you what you're most interested in. And part of the original issue with just the event log browser itself was you had to kind of already know, and the end you had to find an endpoint where the event existed in order to subscribe to it. So if you knew what it was and you didn't know what endpoints had it already, it was difficult to find and create the subscription. Now you can just come in here and you don't even have to be connected to an endpoint to manage it. You can type in the event ID, the source, the path, give it the name and the category, and then save it. And then from that point forward, if it exists on an endpoint that you're doing an investigation on, you'll see it in the list and you'll be able to view the details for it.
man, that's a beautiful thing. Wow. I'm just thinking like ops or security teams both. I mean, you're looking for, let's say, Windows Defender, malware alerts, and you can filter for those and suck those out. I'm curious. So with the subscriptions, I can hear in the back of my head some viewers are now wondering a little bit deeper. So we're not like live subscribing, and these events are streaming all the time. Oh, we have a stream feature, but this is not that. So I've added some event log entries to subscribe here. When are those actually collected from the endpoint?
They are only collected when you open up the Investigate tab and connect to the endpoint. So again, think of it more as a saved query rather than
Okay.
through subscription, right? So when
Hmm.
we start loading all of these, and here's a few that are still loading, right? First, we just ask for what's the count of the this event ID that we've subscribed to and show you what's available here. And then only once you select something that has a count, so here, this is a event log subscription. Once I select this and hit save, now we're issuing another query that is going to return those 8 matching results for it.
So,
So,
so the point is, don't wave your fist and swear at the console when it's like thinking, because it's actually live querying that for you right now, which is so much faster than trying to RDP. Makes me shudder to even think about RDP now.
pull all those things back. Absolutely. And we're enhancing this even further, as I mentioned. So, some of the changes we're making should improve the performance here even further. And then again, we're going to give you the ability to search for the details in here. So let's say that I wanted to, out of all of these events, I only wanted to see the ones that had the target username of our friend James Klepokow in them. Because if I look at some of these other ones, well, actually, most of these have him, but they wouldn't always necessarily have it, right? Just so happens the few that I clicked on are the same user. But in real world environments, you're going to have a lot of matching events with different usernames on them. And for my investigation, I may only care about a specific one. And think about that with any other type of event, right? Each event has its own unique schema, has different data points available into it. I want to be able to search for specifics beyond just the event itself because it's the details that matter to me.
Man, this is fantastic, and the clock is against us. Unfortunately, there's so much. I mean, wow. Again, I it, it's it's weird to say it, but this is another one of those sleeper modules at Tanium. We just looked at Impact and all the crazy stuff that does, and now we're looking at Investigate, and it's like, once you start peeling under the covers, oh my goodness, this does so much, and it's so convenient right there in single endpoint view, which is like where the help desk should just live in single endpoint view, right? Because there's all this rich data there, right there. I mean, wow, talk about like the master control dashboard of just seeing anything that's going on any endpoint within seconds. Again, just great. So, as we kind of wind things down, what else do you want to make sure people are aware of?
One other thing, real quick, and this was another very soon after initial release thing that we added, but again, it's been over a year, so we didn't talk about this before, is we have enterprise-wide pivots for all of our Tanium sourced activities and a handful of the Windows events as well. Not every Windows event, but where available, this little menu over here, you're able to go from a single endpoint to what other endpoints did this happen on in the environment? And depending on what it is, we'll give you a couple different choices. So here I could pivot to a question and interact, or I could go into the performance module and see where else did I have a similar performance related event and see the details on it here as well.
Oh, wow.
Recently, Performance has added integration back into Investigate. So if you are a performance customer and you add on Investigate, you're used to working in this module, in this view. There are areas now where you can click an add to investigation button from here rather than having to go into the view that we were just in, into the single endpoint view, and find the same thing that I was looking at in performance and then add it. And then we have similar integration in threat response as well. If you're used to working in threat response, you don't have to come into investigate and try and find the same data point you were just looking at in threat response. You can add it directly to an investigation from threat response.
Man, we talk about going down the rabbit hole. This is like an extended tour down the rabbit hole. All these tools, and I just had flashbacks of like threat response, old school, where you pivot out. We have got this hash now, find it on all the machines. Now we can do that with this kind of data. Wow.
I think that just about covers. I know that was a lot, and we're probably a little bit over time, but again, there was a lot of improvements over the last year, and we still have a lot more to come. Like I'm excited to do this again in a year. Maybe we won't wait that long, but when we do this again a year from now, to see all the things that have changed between now and then.
Well, Josh, thanks as always coming back, giving us more. And again, this is the pattern that we see on the show frequently: is you asked for it, we built it, and here it is. And again, it's jaw dropping. Like there are times in this episode, I'm just speechless. Like, oh my goodness, all the years, and now we get to do this in real time across any endpoint in the world. I mean, I think of some of our largest customers with hundreds of thousands of endpoints globally, and you can get all of this in seconds. I know I sound like I'm selling a marketing thing or something, but I mean, it's just amazing as a technologist seeing these capabilities. Wow. So, in the show notes below, we've got a link to the former episode where you can get, if you're like, wait a minute, I think I'm missing something here, go back and watch episode 73 where we introduced the concepts of the module to begin with, and then come back and watch this one again. It might give you some more context. Also, there's a link to the docs as usual down there. And also, again, go out to Tanium community at help.tanium.com. Go to the little jump menu, go to community, and after you've looked at the docs and the help side, you can go over to the community and you'll find a discussion forum there for our modules, and you can talk to other Tanium users and see what they're doing and what problems they're solving with these modules that we talked about today. So as always, thank you for joining Tanium Tech Talks. Until next time, go Tanium.